Hey guys, it's Anjali from Doodle Quilting Studio, back for week 2 of the vlog series on how to choose a long arm quilter. So today what we're going to talk about are some of the options for quilting you have with a long armor. Last week we kind of talked about how to choose a long armor, and hopefully you guys got some good information from that. And, a few more ideas on what questions to ask and, how to narrow down the choices of long armors that are out there. So, and I will be, by the end of the series, hopefully putting together a list for you guys, at least of some other long armors that I know of in Alaska. So anybody who's local to Anchorage, Anchorage and surrounding areas, I'll have a list for you of some other long arm quilters, ones that I know do great work, ones that have good websites with good information, and all that good stuff. So today what we're going to do is we're going to chat about the different types of quilting that you can choose from with a long arm quilter. So the most common, there's pantograph quilting. So what that means is they have, on the bed of their machine, they have a pattern that they're following. So they're running their machine typically from the backside. They're watching their pantograph and they're running the machine following the design. So that's going to be typically an edge-to-edge type of design. So it's going to go from one side of the quilt to the other. But it's kind of a mix between computerized and free motion, because you're getting more symmetrical type designs because you're following a pattern. Whereas if you were doing it just strictly free motion, maybe you wouldn't be quite as consistent. So pantograph quilting is one option. And then, of course, you have computerized quilting. Now, when you talk about computerized quilting, there's even a couple options within that. So obviously, when they're offering computerized type quilting, they're programming designs into quilting software, and they're kind of like an embroidery machine. They're starting the machine. It's running by itself, quilting the design across the quilt. And those actually you can do edge to edge, but you can also do more custom looking work. I know there are some quilters, even though they're doing computerized quilting, they're spending a lot of time and effort designing the quilting on that quilt. So they're in their software choosing different elements, placing them in blocks, resizing if they have to make them fit into the different elements on the quilt. So when you're looking at computerized, it's not just a pantograph, or it's not just edge to edge. Those are definitely options, but they can do more custom looking things. And what I'll do is kind of, as we're going to go through these, and then I'll take a second to show you guys some pictures of the different types of quilting, so you can kind of get an idea of what those might look like. So after the computer, then we have full custom quilting, where typically when they're talking about custom quilting, you're looking at quilters who do hand-guided quilting. So hand-guided means that they're running the machine. There's not a computer attached to it. The quilting that they're doing is completely freehand. So I think sometimes, like for me, when I do custom, that's my preference on the quilting that I do. Occasionally I'll do some marking if I feel like the design really needs to be marked out a little bit before I get started. But all of it's hand guided. And typically the quilter is kind of just somewhat deciding what to quilt as they go. Just looking at the different elements of the quilt and then adding designs to it that we think will enhance the designs of the quilt. Some of that is based on feedback from the particular client on what elements of the quilt they want to highlight, what they want to be the focus. And then we can use the quilting to either focus in on that, or if they don't want focus drawn to a certain area, we can use different quilting elements to kind of draw the eye away from certain parts of the quilt. So those are kind of the different options. So what we'll do here is we'll just, we'll take a minute. What I'll do is I'll put up some pictures for you guys to see. I'll talk through the different types of quilting that they are. That way you can kind of see, okay, this is, when she says pantograph, this is what I'm looking for. This is what I'm looking at. So let me grab those and we'll put them up and you guys can check them out, okay? Okay, so what we're looking at here is an edge-to-edge design. So it's going to flow from one side of the quilt to the other, just kind of creating a nice overall pattern. And this one, same sort of thing, but what we're looking at are some leaves and a vine kind of pattern that flow over the entire quilt. Okay, so what we're looking at here is the computer screen that quilters use for computerized quilting to lay out the design. So it's going to look something like this. You can see how uniform those stitches are. And then here you can see how those designs fit really nice together. Okay, what we're looking at here is true custom quilting. So you see all the detail, some ruler work around those stars, a combination of different designs. Same with this block here. Something different has been done in each area, and then all the blocks are done differently as well. So custom quilting done again, surrounding each of those embroideries in the middle there, and then in the individual blocks. Okay, so now we've looked at some different types of quilting, and we've kind of maybe made our decision on the quilter, maybe based on partially on what type of quilting they do. Because if you're looking for somebody to do a pantograph or a computerized quilting, and you go to somebody who does hand-guided quilting, well, they're not going to be able to deliver that for you. So that's part of your decision-making process too. One of those questions that you'd want to ask up front is what kind of quilting they do, maybe their preference. That'll help you narrow down the choices too. But not only do you have to decide what type of quilting you want, but there are other things you have to decide too. And some of that is, some of those are things that the quilter maybe can decide for you or give suggestions on, depending on, if you have a set idea on what you want, or if you're looking to the quilter for some advice on some things. So we have batting. So what kind of batting do you want in your quilt? Do you have a batting preference? A lot of longarmers will offer you can buy batting from the longarmer, and so they'll have whatever they prefer. Like I have Warm and Natural, and then I also have Quilter's Dream Cotton in the Select Loft, which is a mid loft batting. So those are the two that I like. So those are the two that I offer, and so depending on the quilter's preference, they'll have a range of batting for you to choose from. So that's something you decide. And I also, most quilters allow you to bring your own batting. So if you have a batting that you like, I would say as long as it's a quality batting. If you're not sure what that is, that's definitely something that you can chat with the quilter about. That's something that I think I've got on my, I'll find out, on my frequently asked quilty questions page on my website. Talks about some different quality battings. You don't want a real thin batting that's going to pull apart. You wash it one time and the batting starts to pull apart and then your quilt has thin spots. So good quality batting, definitely important. And then there's some choices like, do I want, batting comes in natural, it comes in bleached white, it comes in black. So some of that is deciding, do I want, do I have a black fabric as the, main background of my quilt? Maybe I want black batting then. That way I don't see any of the white batting. Like if I had bleached white batting and a black fabric, maybe I would see some of that white. Or I have a real bright white background quilt, and if I put a natural or obviously a black batting in, you're going to see that. It's going to darken or dull that white. So anything that when people bring their quilts to me and they're bringing me a quilt that's primarily a bright white background, I will typically use that bleached white batting because it keeps that background nice and bright. So some things to consider with batting, and then of course, not only does batting come in different colors and different lofts, so how thick the batting is, you have batting in wool and bamboo and polyester and polyester cotton blends. So there can be a lot of choices when you get to the quilting stage and have to decide, not only how do I want this quilted, but what kind of batting do I want to put into the quilt. So, and that, what, maybe I'll do another little video on the different types of batting and, where and when you might want to use the different types of batting. So, so maybe keep an eye out for that. I'll work on that for you guys. And the quilter, definitely don't be afraid to ask them. they'll probably have a preference on what type of batting they like, and so they can give you some suggestion there. Okay, so after we've chosen our quilting and our batting, then we get to thread. So thread can be such a fun part. I love choosing the thread for when clients bring me quilts. So again, you have a few choices to make. So typically the process I go through when I'm choosing thread with a client is first we're deciding, what part of the quilt do we want to highlight? So are we looking at, you have this beautifully pieced center medallion on this quilt, so we want to really draw your eye into that piece. Or I use my favorite fabric that I've been hoarding for years, and so I really want the quilting to enhance that fabric, or really make that fabric stand out. So we're talking about that, and then once we've decided what part of the quilt we're highlighting, then we decide, okay, maybe what color thread do we want to choose? Do we want the thread to blend? So we're trying to color match the thread to the main part of the quilt. Or do we, are we doing a particular, maybe we're doing a motif or something like that, that we really want to see. So, if you had a quilt that had some nice open blocks and you wanted to design in the middle of the block that you really wanted to see, then maybe we would use a thread that contrasted a little bit more, something a little darker or lighter, depending on the color of your fabric. Oftentimes when clients bring me quilts, and they're quilters, definitely, if you're a longarmer out there and you want to chime in, please do. For me, oftentimes when I get these quilts that people have spent a lot of time working on, like I've gotten some that are like wool applique, or if they've done a lot of even fusible web applique, or like the stained glass quilts are absolutely gorgeous. So people have spent a long time making that quilt top. And so what my purpose is to enhance the work they've already done. And I don't want the quilting that I add to it to take away from the beauty they've already created there. So a lot of times when I'm looking at quilts like that, I'm going to color match my thread to the main part of the quilt. That way, the quilting, you still see the texture, so it's not like you're not seeing the quilting at all. But it's just enhancing what they've already done, because we definitely don't want to take away from all the beauty they've already created. So that's part of the process I go through when choosing thread. Now, the other thing, of course, there's solid thread, there's variegated thread, there's the dreaded monofilament thread, which isn't actually that bad. There probably are some quilters that don't like it, but it's not that bad. So you have all these choices when you're approaching, what thread do I use on this quilt? And most of the time, if I'm doing, when I get clients that bring me edge-to-edge type quilts, oftentimes they're choosing a variegated thread, just because you do get it makes it a little bit more interesting when you're doing an edge-to-edge. You get a little more color variation, just kind of keeps it kind of fun. So I think a lot of quilters do like the variegated thread, because you can it's a little bit more playful maybe. But not only that, but then you have, are we using solid thread? Are we using variegated thread? Are we using cotton or polyester? Is it a coated thread? So sometimes too, what you're looking at is like with just a plain cotton thread, it's going to be more of a matte type finish. So it's going to blend into the quilt a little bit better. You're not going to see it as much. Whereas like a polyester or coated thread, sometimes when the light hits it, you get a little bit of a sheen off the thread. So it catches your eye a little bit more than just more of a matte thread would. So that's something else to kind of think about. Like, do I really want to notice the quilting on this, or do I want to just see the overall texture of the quilting? And if I just want to see texture, I'm going to go for a matte thread. If I want to see some of the stitching and I kind of want the light to catch that, then I'll use a coated polyester thread. So just kind of depends on what kind of, quilting you're looking for. So there are a lot of choices. When you're just talking about batting and thread, that's a lot of choices right there, kind of narrowing it down. But I would say whatever quilter you go with, they're going to have some information to give you on that. And they're going to be able to help you narrow those choices down. They're going to ask you those questions. What do you want to highlight? How much of this, quilting do you want to see? Like, is that first thing you want to see, or do you want to see the overall, quilt before you see the thread? So don't be afraid to ask them those questions if they're not asking you. If or if you have a specific idea and you're like, hey, this is what I really want. This is really what I want to see. I don't think that there's ever a time when you can give them too much information. So if you have a specific idea, definitely speak up about it. And then as far as making requests, I mean, I like I said, I don't think that you shouldn't be afraid to ask for something specific. If it's something that the quilter can't do, then obviously, I mean, I would hope that they would tell you, that's just something that I can't do, or, and maybe lead you to somebody else who could, or figure out, a different option if you're, set on that particular quilter. But, the nice thing is that, there are quite a few machine quilters out there. I think sometimes people don't think they are because, maybe the information is a little harder to find or something like that. But especially, so I'm in Anchorage, especially here, there are quite a few options. And I know, for me, I always like knowing a few other quilters who, could complement what I do. So I don't do any computerized quilting. So I do have a contact that does computerized quilting. And so I can refer those clients to her, and it's kind of nice because then I don't have to just say, oh, I'm sorry, I can't do that for you. I have some answers still for them and say, these are some options for you, explore these avenues. So don't be afraid. Hopefully, if the particular quilter can't do exactly what you're looking for, they can give you some recommendations on folks that can. And like I mentioned, I'm trying to put together a list of the local quilters here and what they do, what their preferences are. So that way, if you're looking, you can explore all the options, because it's really, it's just kind of finding the right fit. So, like I have some clients that it's just, we were just meant for each other, I guess. I don't know. Like I was just meant to work on their quilt. It's just a really good relationship. They know what I like to do, and I know what they like as far as quilting. And so it's just a really good relationship. So, definitely don't be afraid to explore all the options and ask all the questions you can think of. And if you have something quilted by somebody and you're like, oh, I don't know, maybe I want to try someone else, just try somebody else. I mean, I definitely think that you should be happy with the end product. And so sometimes that might just mean you have to do a little bit of exploring. So hopefully that gives you a little bit more information on how to, what kind of options you have as far as the quilting goes, and then, a little bit more information about batting and thread from your long arm quilter. So if you guys have any more questions about different choices, or, like I said, I'll work on that batting information sheet for you guys. Hopefully that'll help you kind of narrow it down. And if you're a long armer, please send me an email or leave me a comment, and that way, you guys can chime in too, because it's just me sitting here with the dogs who are sleeping on the couch, so they're not much help. So if you guys have any information you want to share, or you're like, hey, make sure you share this is important too, just shoot me an email. Otherwise, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope week 2 gives you some other good information. And we'll be back next week for what you need to bring or send if you mail your quilts out to your long armer. So we'll go over the condition of the quilt top, the backing, all that stuff. So I will talk to you guys next week, and I hope you're getting good information from this. So I'll talk to you guys later.